Right, we're going to carry on with our narrative text, our story, and our planning. We're going to look at those features of traditional stories, choose which parts to keep and change, and you're going to outline the main points of your story. Right, look closely at this picture. You're probably going to have to pause. What fairy stories can you spot? I don't know what all of them are, but there are quite a few in there that you should be able to spot. So let's take one of these traditional stories and see what it's going to look like on the planning grid that we're going to be using. I've chosen this one, which is obviously Little Red Riding Hood. So in the introduction, a girl is asked to take some supplies to her sick grandmother in the forest. That's what happens at the beginning. Event 1, she meets a wolf who tells her to be careful. Event 2, the wolf runs ahead, eats grandma, and disguises himself as her. And thirdly, Red Riding Hood sees through the disguise and escapes from the wolf. Now this box that says details, we can add some extra bits in there to remind us when we're doing our final piece what needs to go in. So extra details for the first part: the wolf is sly, vicious and threatening. The woods are dark and foreboding. Details for the second bit: he wears a cloth hat and nightshirt and hides in grandma's bed. And details for the last bit: Red Riding Hood notices the wolf's big eyes, ears, nose and teeth. The ending of the story: luckily the woodcutter comes and kills the wolf, freeing grandma. Red Riding Hood learns to be more careful. And this box here, openers and conjunctions, is just for you to make a note of some of the things that you're going to use in your final story. So you might use suddenly, slowly, a few minutes later, quick as a flash. There's loads of these. We talk about them all the time. So if you think of something that might be useful, remember you don't have to use it, and stick it in that box there. And down the bottom, we're looking at the language features we're going to use in that final piece of writing. So we're going to be thinking about the third person, past tense, we're going to be using descriptive language, similes, it's going to be formal language, and we're going to use some speech. So let's think about the story that you've got and how you're going to change it. So I'm going to think about Red Riding Hood and this what if it was not question. So let's have a think. We've got Red Riding Hood in the forest, sees a wolf, wolf runs ahead, eats grandma, etc, etc. What if the wolf was doing the right thing and Red Riding Hood wanted to eat grandma? That's a good idea. So Red Riding Hood's asked to go to the woods to take the food to grandma, but she thinks, oh, this is an opportunity to eat grandma. And she meets the wolf and she stupidly tells the wolf, I'm going to eat grandma. So off she goes, and when she gets there, grandma's there, and just as she's about to eat her, the wolf comes in and eats Red Riding Hood whole, and the wolf and grandma live happily ever after. That would be an interesting, different version of that story, but I'm sure there's better things that you can come up with. That was just off the top of my head. So think about, what story are you going to retell? That's important. Make sure that some things stay the same, but some things have to change. Do not just write me the exact same story that you've heard loads and loads of times before. You need to change things around. Change who's good, who's bad. Change what the characters do. Change how it ends. Change how it starts. Change where it is. Lots of things you can change, and people will still recognise that you're working from the same story. Just don't make sure you just tell the ordinary story. That's boring and not what I'm asking for. So what you need to do now is fill in the plan on your grid. Remember, just like mine, it's detailed notes. Don't try and write out the whole of your story on that planning grid. I've attached the grid to your email, or if not, you can just draw a version of it in your book. Right, I'll see you tomorrow.